I want to thank you for joining us. Derrik Hubbard here, certified financial planner, professional, and an endorsed local provider for Dave Ramsey. We're on our fourth video in this series of the 8 keys of a solid financial plan. And you may notice that we're recording a little differently this time around. We've got both me, but also a downloadable financial planning process form. Below the video that you're watching is actually a link to be able to download a cheat sheet for these 8 keys of a solid financial plan. So I encourage you, download that, print that out, follow along with me as you see that we are actually in the first phase. Notice that when we look through this financial planning process, we've got 8 keys, but they're divided into 3 phases. We've got a blueprinting phase where the first 4 keys lie. We've got a building phase. That's where we implement the blueprint. That's where the 5th, 6th, and 7th key is. And then finally we've got our progress meeting process, the last phase. Right now we're in the blueprinting phase. We're talking about the first 4 keys where we've blueprinted the goals, we've benchmarked where we are financially speaking. In the last video we broke down how much is enough to save for those goals, and here we are on the 4th key. If you're anything like the clients that I work with, you're normally going to discover what I call the gap. And the gap is that difference between the current trajectory you're on and ultimately where you need to end up. It's the difference between what you're currently saving and what you ultimately need to save in order to have, quote, enough for each of the financial goals that we're working toward. So in this 4th key, this bridging the gap key, we're going to talk about what are the 3 strategies that we can employ either by themselves or collectively in order to bridge that gap. Let's talk about the very first strategy that we can employ. The first strategy is that we can, what I call, increase our cash flow margin. Or if we look back at our cash flow in step 2, benchmarking our current financial reality, we saw our cash flow was how much comes in and what goes out. It results in our cash flow margin. Or another way to put it is our savings potential. So the very first strategy to bridging the gap is to increase that cash flow margin. And that can be accomplished in one of 3 ways. One, we can increase our income. It's not always possible, but for some it is. Secondly, we can decrease our outflow. There are a lot of strategic ways that we can look at in order to decrease our outflow. And the third option is to do a combination of the 2, increase income and decrease cash flow. Whichever approach you take, the ultimate result is the same. We will increase our savings potential or cash flow margin. So that's the very first strategy to employ when bridging the gap. The second strategy that we can employ revolves around a future key that we'll talk about, and it revolves around the investment strategy that we employ. So the second strategy of bridging the gap is putting a system or strategy in place with your investments with the goal of increasing the return on investment. So once again, second strategy, increase return on investment through, and we'll talk about this in a lot more detail when we talk about the 6th key, through improving your investment strategy. So 1, we can increase cash flow margin. 2, we can improve our investment strategy so that we ultimately have to save less. When we improve our strategy, the work of compound interest allows us to actually need to put aside less for each of the goals. Or if those 2 proactive strategies don't work, you can always fall back on our third strategy, and that is to change or modify the financial goals that you've set initially. If you remember, each of your financial goals had 4 different aspects. It was the what, the when, the how much, and the why. Now, 2 of those, the how much and the when, can be modified in order to decrease the total amount needed. Let's take an example, maybe retirement. Well, if I needed to bridge the gap in the area of retirement, it might be that I could lengthen my work horizon. That's one option of modifying my goal. Or I could reduce the total amount that I need in retirement as my goal. Either one of those modifications is going to potentially reduce the total amount that I need to accumulate. For example, if I increase my work horizon 3 more years, I've got 3 more years of potential compounding, and I have 3 less years to provide for in retirement. So modifying the goals that we initially set can be a powerful way to bridge the gap. So let's look at all 3 of those again. These can be done individually or collectively. We can, 1, increase our savings rate or our savings potential through the increase of income or decreasing our outflow. That's number 1. Number 2, and we'll look at it in more depth, is we can potentially increase our overall return on investment by improving the investment strategy that we employ. And then finally, the 3rd strategy is we can modify the goals that we set, either in the amount that we need or in the time frame that we're attempting to accomplish those. So that completes this blueprinting phase. Once again, we blueprint the future in terms of our goals. We benchmark our current reality, what's our cash flow and our net worth. 3, we're going to break down how much is enough to save for each of those goals. And here we are today, we're bridging the gap between how much is enough and our current trajectory. So once we get done with this, we're done with the blueprinting phase. We have at least on paper a plan for how we're going to accomplish everything. In the next video, we're going to talk about the building phase. And the building phase is where the rubber kind of meets the road, and we're actually going to begin controlling cash flow, crafting an investment strategy, and creating a safety net for our overall financial plan. So I look forward to talking with you then.